Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, there is a lot of hype surrounding artificial intelligence and voice technology right now. But there's also a lot of doom and gloom as well. And I wanted to take a step back from all that and add a more positive narrative to this technology. So today, I want to explore the unexpected ways that AI will help consumers in their everyday lives and how AI experiences can help you take care of specific tasks more easily, faster and better than before. And also look into compassionate AI and how that's going to help make experiences feel less cold and more human. And I've found a perfect guest to discuss all that with today. His name is Alex Spinelli, and he leads the technology organisation at LivePerson. And he oversees R&D globally. And prior to LivePerson, he was global head of Alexa OS for Amazon, running a large distributed team of developers and leading the development of the core software and capabilities that underpin the Alexa platform. I think it's fair to say he knows his stuff, so buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Seattle so we can speak with Alex right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I am. One, thanks for having me join. I'm pretty excited for the conversation today. I'm Alex Spinelli. I am the Chief Technology Officer of LivePerson. And so I basically am the guy that's building the technology and delivering our services in the pursuit of enabling any company anywhere to use natural language to build really great interactions and experiences with consumers. We think conversations are better. So we think more and more companies, more and more services should have them directly with their consumers using the latest and greatest AI capabilities available.
And I'm glad you mentioned the word language there, because I'm excited to talk with you and explore more about LivePerson in a few moments. But something I always try and do with each of the guests is find out a little bit more about what put them on the path and what led them to the project that they're doing now. And with you, for example, prior to LivePerson, you were the global head of Alexa OS for Amazon, and you were running a large distributed team of developers all around the world and leading a development of core software systems and capabilities that all underpin the Alexa platform that we all know and love. So I've got to ask, can you tell me a little bit more about your time there and ultimately what lessons you learned working with this technology?
Yeah. So before I was leading the Alexa OS, and just to be clear, the Alexa OS is kind of the cloud brains of Alexa. So not the operating system on the devices that are in your house, but almost 99% of what happens with Alexa happens up in the cloud. Before I did that, I was actually leading search for Amazon, where I was obsessing over how people browse and search for products, how they make decisions for the best product. And one of the things that was really interesting was in the search box, people started to try to have conversations with Amazon. People wanted to ask questions. People wanted to, is this product compatible with this product? What's the best gift for mom? It's Valentine's Day. So what's a great, Valentine's gift for my boyfriend or girlfriend? And we spent a lot of time trying to understand, okay, how can we make that experience better and better? When people are starting to ask these questions in the search box, it's not the best place to try to have a conversation. It's not built for that. So we created, guided search, and we did a lot of things using natural language to what we call query understanding to try to understand their search query in more detail. And one of the things that became really apparent to me is as more and more people use our websites, apps, digital services for more and more aspects of their life, which now, especially during COVID, we're all using, almost all digital, right? The interfaces that we have today, the idea of the little hamburger menu or the three dots on your mobile app, swiping, tapping, the search box, the left navigation and filters, all those things that we've spent 20 years building if you've been in the digital world. they're really like actually terrible experiences. They were what we had in terms of creating an experience on a flat screen, and they're really not natural. And they're actually, they're good for quick search, quick browse, quick click, but they're not really good when you suddenly need to use the digital services for everything, right? You can't ask questions, you can't have a dialogue. It's really hard to kind of discover things. So Alexa was kind of just an idea at the time. It was this device at Amazon. And I got really excited to join that team. And I said, I want to go figure out how to actually build, real natural experiences. So did that. We know, how Alexa evolved and what it's become. And I met my current boss who connected with me and was like, hey, I have some really interesting challenges at LivePerson. We had known each other for a number of years back when I lived in New York. And I said, I'm good. I'm working on Alexa, probably the hottest product on the planet. All good. And he said, no, there's something really interesting. I want to enable any business to actually have the benefits of natural language. I want to enable large businesses, small businesses, and all consumers, not just for Amazon. And I got really excited. I spent more and more time with him, and I looked at what LivePerson was doing, which was enabling messaging at scale. So LivePerson's traditional business allows you to use messaging, iMessage, Facebook Messenger, what have you, to interact with businesses. But it was mainly a human-to-human interaction. So the AI wasn't in the mix there. So basically you get into scale issues, right? Because you can't have an unlimited number of customer service agents or sales agents taking tens of millions of conversations. So we talked a lot about it, and the ability to take a lot of what the concepts are in natural language, conversational interfaces, and democratize them and build a platform that lets really anyone, any business, create a conversational experience that blends AI and humans in a really smart way, was really interesting to me. And I'll just say, like, conversations, just our big view is conversations are better. Like, you and I are having a conversation right now. You have a podcast. You don't put up microsites of your conversation and say, here, click and browse, and you could read and swipe and tap through the conversation. Of course not. It sounds silly for me to even tell you that. But in reality, that's what we do day in and day out, is we use these kind of flat interfaces. So yeah, I actually want to use AI in a kind of ironic twist to bring humanity back into our digital experiences.
It's incredibly cool. And like you said, here in 2021, you are with LivePerson. And one of the things that really stands out for me is how you're powering these conversational commerce almost for the world's leading brands and transforming how people connect and transact with brands. But can you tell the listeners a little bit more and possibly expand on that and the kind of problems that you're solving, and maybe even provide a use case just to set the scene?
Yeah. So what we have is a platform that if you're a business, you can essentially create what we call automations that use natural language. So your own kind of mini Alexa. And if you're a bank, for example, or if you're a restaurant, or if you're a hair salon, there's a whole number of things that you need to interact with your consumers. So we actually have a predefined set of natural language services that let you, for example, if you're the hair salon, you're a small business, let you allow people to find out, who's cutting hair today, right? Who can I make an appointment? Can I change my appointment? Can I, browse styles, those kinds of things. If you're a bank, it's about, checking your balance, paying some bills, those kinds of things. So it's a predefined set of components that you can actually build and mix and match. And they basically end up being expressed in a conversation. That conversation can sit, like I said before, in iMessage, that can sit on the web in a window. It can sit in SMS. WhatsApp has become a really powerful tool internationally. And then we actually make sure that your consumer, as they're asking those questions, like, is Kristen or Michael available for an appointment today at the hair salon? If you get stuck, that kind of proverbial, blue screen of death, or we call them like a bot death spiral, where the bot or the AI is saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand you, sorry, I don't understand you. We avoid that from ever happening. And we actually allow that conversation to get routed to a human. So if you're the owner of the hair salon, you actually get an SMS or a message that says, hey, Michael's been trying to make an appointment with Alex for a haircut tomorrow. and there's something I didn't understand. Can you call them back? Can you contact them? Or we can actually connect that conversation in real time over something like SMS or WhatsApp. So it's a whole toolkit for really taking your website or taking your app and actually trying to make it conversational and making sure that you can actually build that real deeper connection with your consumer. And you can really differentiate yourself. Actually, the cool thing about conversations is you can have personality. You can really reflect your brand's values. So some of the big customers we have today are Verizon or T-Mobile or Home Depot. These are some of our big customers. And then we also have tens of thousands of small customers, from plumbers to used car lots using our technology. Chipotle is actually one of our kind of big recent wins in enabling to order sandwiches digitally and configure them and get them. And it's all through that conversational experience, the same way, you and I now primarily, at least in my world, primarily talk to my kids and my loved ones is all through messaging and conversation.
It really is. And if we do explore further and look at the unexpected ways that AI will continue to help consumers in their everyday lives, I'm curious, how do you see AI experiences helping listeners to take care of specific tasks more easily and faster and better than before? Is there anything you can share around that of what you've got in mind?
Yeah. So, the cool thing about what AI does with natural language experiences is it suddenly lets you scale those conversations in a way you couldn't before. So natural language has progressed to a point, natural language understanding, I should say, has progressed to a point where we can get 95% accuracy in understanding it. It's not perfect. We're not there yet in terms of perfection. But we use AI to do a few things. So we use AI, one, to understand natural language. So you can ask any question, talk in the tone and in the way that you typically would talk to another human being. We use AI to actually understand what your goal might be. So even though you might be asking for a balance or a bill pay scenario, we actually can go and look at your history and those kinds of things and understand that there actually might be something else going on. And you might actually be looking for an upgrade, or you might be someone who's likely to cancel. So we can actually understand that and provide tools to the business to say, hey, this is somebody who, they have a history of some bill problems. They've actually been unhappy. They have low sentiment. So we can use AI to detect your tone. You actually might want to give them an offer, treat them with some additional care and concern, maybe even send them to a human being, an agent who specializes in helping people with some harder problems. So the AI becomes this assistant that understands you as a consumer, but then also provides all this other data and information to try to make your experience as good as possible. And then on the back end of all that, for larger enterprises especially, we actually look across all their conversations and try to tell the business, how are you doing, right? How are your consumers, are they happy? What are the biggest problems that people are coming in with? Do you have a hotspot, right? So for telcos, this is kind of interesting. We've actually enabled the detection of outages for some large telco companies because people start messaging, hey, I can't connect or I can't download something, or I'm having this problem with phone calls. And those, we've actually seen places where those conversations are coming in real time because it's actually a person's experience, or even ahead of some of the network detection tools. So AI actually will find those hotspots and those emerging trends. So it really becomes this toolkit for you to understand what's happening as your consumers are interacting with you, but at large scale. And that's where AI works great, right? It can consume and look at tons and tons of data and find patterns. I should say, though, one of the things, obviously, and this is a hot topic, is privacy concerns, ethics in AI, bias in AI. So that's the other thing, that the sort of flip side to that, all the benefits, is we actually take a lot of pains to understand where bias might be creeping into AI. And a lot of that starts in the data sets. So we actually have a whole bunch of tools and technologies, and we actually participate with a nonprofit called EqualAI, where we've taken the EqualAI pledge, which is that we pledge to do a series of things to understand bias in our technologies in AI. And then, of course, privacy, everyone's concern is something that we take, very, very seriously. We don't share. We're not an advertising company. We don't target you. We don't share your data. Those conversations and the AI that's going on is really just for you and the business that you're interacting with. So it's really this power tool that we want to democratize and make sure, if you're a business, large or small, you can take advantage of it.
Love that. And so many valid points about privacy, ethics, and bias. And another thing around AI that often crops up is a lot of shoppers or consumers are concerned about losing the human element to a transaction. So do you think a more compassionate AI will eventually make these experiences feel less cold and more human?
Yeah, super important point. We're not a company. We're an AI company, but we are not an AI company that says let's go out and replace people. That concern, to me, I kind of live in the belly of the beast in many respects in terms of what AI is doing and how it's advancing. I think we're quite a long ways away from something like a her or that true singularity moment. Right now, AI needs to be a tool that we use responsibly. And we look at it as a tool that can augment, enhance human activities, that can help both you as a consumer and you as an employer, as the business, as an agent in a contact center, as a sales agent. It's a powerful tool that allows you to scale and you to extend and you to get information that you need so that you can do your job better. Will it change jobs? Yes, I think it will. It can dramatically change jobs and change roles. But do we believe it's the elimination of human roles? No, we actually think it's actually a powerful tool to help you learn and extend and do things that are new. This idea of a compassionate AI is super important. So I think just as businesses have really embraced being green, being socially responsible, I think we have to bring that same thinking into the way we think about AI and how we use AI. So we often talk about, compassionate tech, tech that loves you, things that you typically don't hear about. It's hard to measure, sound a little bit, kind of heady, but it's really important. I think in today, especially when we look at some of the downsides of this hyper targeting and the ability for extremism to suddenly get garnered and captured, and a lot of that kind of has its roots in the way machine learning was used for hyper targeting and advertising. I think we as consumers sold our behaviors, we sold our data to some of the biggest companies in the world, and we didn't know what the downsides were going to be. And now I think we're seeing some of them. So I do think this idea of compassionate AI, bringing your values as a company, not just looking at it as science and math, because all the science and math are created by human beings, and human beings bring their biases and bring their principles. And I think we have to make sure that we're creating these things that do have a public benefit and a public good in mind. I think that's our responsibility. I think we owe it to the next generation. So I think it's a super important point. I don't think it's easy. It's something we feel very strongly about and passionate about. And we're spending a lot of time to think about, how can we measure that? How can we hold ourselves accountable to a compassionate AI? I don't think we've cracked it yet, but it is definitely something we're working on.
Yeah, none of it is easy, and it is incredibly complex. And AI will have to make high stakes decisions with somewhat interesting implications. I think largely AI gets a bit of a bad rap, and a lot of people will label it as the bad guy. And we've all seen those Terminator-style articles. But the reality is, of course, that a lot of this information and bias that is has been unwittingly entered by humans. It's not the technology it's bad; it's what we're adding into it. How do we overcome that and that bias that is being put in by humans, do you think?
Yeah, so the way you're 100% right. So the way AI works is there are mathematical models.
Yeah.
Mathematical models have a formula associated with them, oversimplifying. And there are numbers and weightings that you give something. So a very simple example would be a machine learning or AI-based algorithm that's trying to do stock trades. And you believe that the weather, when it snows really heavy in New York City, where the markets are, that can slow down, or reduce prices on certain types of stocks. That's a bias. So you build that bias into your algorithm. Someone else uses your algorithm. Someone builds an algorithm on top of your algorithm. And that secret bias, they call it magic numbers. When you put a particular weight on a particular parameter in your machine learned model, that's called a magic number. I think weather has a 20% impact, based on my research on these stocks. Those things happen to creep into AI all over the place. So, and they are human bias inputs into machine learning and AI. In addition to that, the data you use to teach an AI. So what an AI does is it looks at many, many, many examples and then applies its formula, right? So if those examples were selected from a group that doesn't have a great representation, it's going to be skewed. So we've had examples, there've been examples out in the wild where there was some police image recognition, photo recognition that was over-indexing on people of color, right? Or assuming certain things that people of color were criminal and white people were not. Why? The data sets that they were given came from biased backgrounds, right? Or they weren't able to recognize certain types of ethnicities. Why? Because the data actually didn't have those representative ethnicities in the original submission in terms of the samples. So some of those, I like to think they're inadvertent mistakes by scientists who are picking data sets. There's millions of examples, and they're actually didn't have that ethics bar set and defined. I think most people try to operate ethically, but it needs to be defined as a principle that we will use data from representative samples. We will evaluate all those magic numbers and ask the hard questions. Are we introducing bias? So those are the ways that you can actually start to pull back on some of the bias as it creeps into your models and your AI by really challenging yourself. Like, what are the weights? What are the magic numbers you're putting in? Who's building your models? Do they have biases? Have you trained them to think about unconscious bias? Where are you getting your data? How are you correcting your samples? Is it representative so that you can have the right outcomes that you're looking for? Again, none of this is easy, right? It's complex and it's hard, but I think we have to set those standards. We have to set those standards so that we're looking for these challenges. And it's solvable. Like, it is truly solvable. It's going to take some work, but these are solvable problems.
I completely agree with you there. And in slightly brighter news, I think it's also important to recognise that AI made it possible to get to this critical moment of the first COVID vaccinations. But I'm curious, what do you think is next for the healthcare industry? Because there seems to be some huge opportunities there.
Yeah, so absolutely. Anyone who's worried or scared of AI needs to just look no further than the ability to develop a vaccine. And they had the first version of the vaccine in just a matter of months. And bringing that to market and all the testing and safety requirements is what takes 8, 9, 10 plus months. But the ability to look at genomes and index them and understand them and find patterns and isolate that spike protein that we've heard so much about. Absolutely. Machine learning AI technologies were mission critical for that. So I think we're seeing what are the benefits if you apply it to the right places. I think for healthcare is interesting. So I think there's a lot in terms of really helping understanding personalized medicine, in terms of understanding our own backgrounds, our own proclivities. But there's going to be a lot of gotchas there too, around privacy, around decisions. This is where kind of AI ethics and bias are going to become really important. It's non-healthcare, but if you think about self-driving cars, the AI is going to have to make decisions to break the law. And AI will have to decide if there's a safety issue. Do they speed up and actually violate speed laws? Do they run a red light? Do they make a turn when they shouldn't to avoid some type of a nasty situation? So same when you start thinking about healthcare, right? Who and why should be recommended for certain treatments could be based on lots and lots of data and history. Now that's going to work statistically for large populations, but then every individual is going to be unique and different. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of this idea around personalized medicine, personalized healthcare, and that's going to be really important. We are actually working on less around specifically personalized medicine, but can we use AI and create an assistant that actually can understand you and your health and wellness goals and actually help you do the things that get you more healthy, right? So can we actually, just like you think about an Alexa or like I described before, an assistant that helps you navigate paying bills or build problems or ordering food or a sandwich when you really need one, we actually think we can turn that toward your health and wellness goals. So we're going to be spending some time investigating that and investing there. I'm pretty excited about what AI can bring to the healthcare and health and wellness space. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, but we got to make sure we go in open-eyed and address some of the things that we talked about before around the bias and ethics pieces.
Absolutely. And talking of going through things with open eyes, I think if you're navigating through any significant changes in our lives or in our work, there's always the change curve that we all go through, and those wide range of emotions on that journey. So I'm curious, do you think there might be some kind of AI backlash, and how do you think people will respond as we move into and pass through that disillusionment part of the hype cycle? Do you think what do you think we'll see there?
Yeah, so I do think, I believe in that cycle, right? You kind of have the exuberance and then disillusionment, and then you start to kind of come up as you realize the real benefits. I think we're entering a little bit of an AI backlash right now. I think AI as a label has been slapped on lots and lots of things that, they're not really AI. They might use a little machine learning or some statistical analysis. I think it's been slapped on things that people want excitement about. I also think it's been slapped on things to create some scare and get people. As you can hear, I'm not scared of AI. I'm actually pretty bullish on it. I'm pretty excited about it. We talked about the pitfalls, but I think right now we need to start to see, where the rubber hits the road. So I think the big hype of like the all-knowing AI, the personified AI, the anthropomorphized AI, I think we're going to see a pullback on some of that. I think we're going to see a pullback on every business everywhere labeling itself AI. Because I think I think a few things are happening. One, at the enterprise, we're not seeing the all singing singularity dancing and machine, washing machine AI that was going to solve every problem. That's not actually turning out to be. It's hard work. You need experts. You need data. You have to have these ethics and bias concerns. So I think businesses are like, okay, what am I really going to do with AI? It's don't just come and call yourself an AI technology and I'm going to drop it in. It's going to solve all my problems. Like I actually need to do real work. There's no free lunch, right? You got to do real work. You got to understand it. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a pullback on the hype. I think at the same time, we're going to see rubber hitting the road where AI is actually going to do some real things and real work. Maybe that's a little bit simpler than some of the hype was saying, but it's going to actually make a huge difference. And at some of the sense I was describing earlier, right? You're going to use it to do moderate to simple to moderate tasks. It's going to create some significant efficiencies in the businesses. It's going to enable humans to actually scale and be more efficient, do their work faster. It's going to enable you to handle more workload. Not all of those pieces are going to be sexy. Not all of them are going to be super exciting, but actually rubber is really going to hit the road, and we're going to actually start to see AI finding patterns, making recommendations to workers on a day in and day out about what the next best action might be, fielding conversations where you can pay your bill, get some basic help, buy your sandwich, do all the kinds of things that we talked about earlier, and really start to deliver some meaningful value. But I think, are we going to have the AI assistant that comes into my house and, wakes me up in the morning and tells me my full agenda and what I really should be eating for breakfast? No, I think that's going to be a little ways out. So I think we're going to get this kind of divergent sense of AI where it's going to feel like it's pulled back, but in reality, it's gone a little bit quiet because it's actually doing some real hard work. I'm
going to ask you to gaze into your virtual crystal ball here and dare to look a little bit beyond 2021. Is there any future predictions or things that you think might happen on the horizon, or anything that just excites you about the road ahead?
Yeah, interestingly, I've spent a lot of time envisioning and thinking about that kind of where it can really go, 5 to 10 years out. What I'm actually really excited about is actually what I've been saying is I'm really excited for the rubber to hit the road. I'm excited for AI to come in and enable sales agents to actually work remotely in a super effective way to make recommendations of who their hottest leads are. What is the best product for those consumers or those purchasers? I'm really excited to use AI to go and do the things that I want to do with various businesses that outfit my life, businesses that have been a little bit left behind from the digital revolution, things like in terms of their interactions, their consumer experience, telcos, utilities, banks, those kinds of things. I'm really excited to see the real benefits of machine learning and AI and day-to-day actions of businesses. And I think that's got a good 2 to 3 years in it. And what that means is, I think it changes. And this is, I actually really love the human aspect of this. If you look at customer service agents, which is almost 6% of the workforce in the US, it actually can change their lives in terms of helping them evolve and advance their careers. So they're going to become AI annotators and bot tuners and data labelers that actually participate in scaling AI. And I'm actually really excited for how that can actually change their jobs and give them new career opportunities. So again, it's not like, hey, there's going to be this, vision who's going to walk in and be this amazing robot. I'm actually really excited to start to permeate and be in a lot of parts of our lives so that we can really start to see the value. And then I think we'll pick back up on some of the much bigger stuff that is soon to come, but still a little ways out.
Well, I've loved chatting with you today. So many big talking points there. But before I do let you go, for anyone listening that would just like to find out a little bit more information about the work that you're doing, what's the best way of finding you online with LivePerson?
Yep, start at liveperson.com, and then we'll lead you into a great conversation. So we got some of our greatest stuff there, and we'd love to have a chat with you.
Excellent. Well, I think traditionally people have feared that businesses were investing heavily in technology and expensive projects and then pay for it by reducing headcount. But I think now more than ever, we're finally recognizing that the real value is machines and humans complementing each other, getting the best of both worlds rather than competing against each other. And it just feels like a massive turning point for me. But more than anything, just a big thank you for opening my eyes, and hopefully everyone listening as well, on the possibilities ahead and how it's nothing to be afraid of. So thanks for sharing that with me today, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great.
I love Alex's positivity there. We've all seen those doom and gloom articles, and it's great to hear a much more positive side to this story. But seeing as AI is a topic that's going to affect each and every one of us, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I want to hear good, bad, indifferent. I want to hear it all. And I also invite you to come on here and talk about it if you would like to. So please, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You'll find 1,500 podcast interviews and also links to all my social channels if you'd like to speak with me on there. And when I say please contact me, I do mean it. I reply to every email, as long as it's not just a sales pitch to buy something. I will reply to every message. So keep them coming in. I will speak with you all again tomorrow. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.